All right, problem number 3 on the final. Okay, same kind of problem as number 1 where something's being thrown. This time it's going into the air and it's going to come back down. So your rule here is negative 16t squared plus 32t. So for A, it says substitute 0 for h. Okay, so I've written 0 equals negative 16t squared plus 32t. And then we're going to solve this by factoring. So to factor this one, I'm still going to have 0 equals, but I need to factor out of negative 16t squared and 32t a common factor. So what I'm going to factor out of there is negative 16t, because both terms, the negative 16t squared and the 32t, 16 can go into both of those, into 16 and 32, and p can go into both t squared and t. So I'm going to factor those out. Now in my parentheses, what's left after I factor out the negative 16t squared, after I factor out the negative 16t from the negative 16t squared, is the t. And then when I factor out negative 16t from positive 32t, well, 32 divided by negative 16 is negative 2. And t over t, they would cancel each other out. So we're left with that. Now, if I want it to equal 0, it means that I have to put in values for t that are going to make this thing equal 0. So I can think about it like this. I've got this negative 16t. Okay. Now, if that equaled 0, it wouldn't matter what's in the parentheses, because if that were 0, 0 times whatever is in the parentheses would be 0. So if I divide by negative 16 here, you're going to see the solution to that is 0, because 0 divided by anything is 0. So there's one solution. Now my other solution involves this t minus 2. Because again, if I can make that 0, it doesn't matter what the negative 16t is, because if I take that times 0, I'm going to get 0. So t minus 2, if that were to equal 0, again, I just have to add the 2, and I would get t equals 2. So there are my two solutions to this, t equals 0 and t equals 2. Letter B, it says explain what your solutions mean in the context of this problem. Okay? So it means at 0 seconds, the object was on the ground. We'll say projected from the ground. And came back down 2 seconds later. Okay, so at 0, that's when we started. We projected this thing into the air. It was in the air for 2 seconds before it came back and hit the ground. Okay, now letter C says find the vertex by completing the square on the original equation. Show your work, then explain what the vertex represents in context. So I have that original equation here. Now for completing the square, one thing I have to remember is I usually have a number here off on the right. Well, there's no number there, so it's really plus 0. So when I go to complete the square, I'm going to break off that plus 0. Okay? And I want t squared, so I'm going to factor out the negative 16. So inside the parentheses, I'm going to be left with t squared. 32t divided by negative 16 is going to be negative 2t. I need to leave a spot to put something there. And I'll have parentheses. again, plus, and I've got this plus 0 broken off, and I'll have to put something there as well. Okay, so I look at my b value here, which is the -2. So half of -2 is -1, and -1 squared is +1. So that goes there. Now, after the 0, I have to do the opposite of whatever I did in the parentheses. Okay, so that we don't change the value. So I didn't really add 1, I really added -16 times 1. And -16 times 1 is -16. So if I added -16 on that, I have to add +16 over here. Okay? So now I have this. Now I'm going to write this trinomial that's in the parentheses as a square binomial. Again, half of -2 is -1. So that's what goes there. We square that. 0 plus 16 is 16. So now my vertex is going to be the opposite of that, whatever is happening to the t. So that's -1, so it's going to be +1. And my y value for my vertex is that value is the 16, whatever comes after. So my vertex is 116. Now what that means is after 1 second, the object reaches its max height of 16 feet. All right, so there's problem number 3 for the final. Good luck.